Hello, guys. Welcome to the breakdown with Johanna and Tanya. We are in episode 6, Benefits of Plant Medicine.
I am so excited for this episode.
You know, we have been talking about wanting to do this episode for quite some time and finding the right person. And that was really our key for us, is like, we need to find somebody who like knows a little bit of everything so that we can really, because we were talking about this even when we were trying to figure out what we were going to narrow it down on question wise. And I remember I said to Johanna, I'm like, what do we focus on? I feel like we could have like a 6-part series on plant medicine alone.
Totally.
Yeah. So we are really focusing on today, so you guys are aware, the psychospiritual healing, or what people consider psychedelic therapy, of utilizing plant medicine. Because plant medicine, guys, can be in all different forms, even from outside of psychedelic therapy. So
Absolutely.
That's what we wanted to focus on, because, I mean, it's massive, okay? And we love anything to do with this kind of stuff just because we're interested, intrigued on how it actually helps people. So I remember, was it almost 2 years ago that I had brought up ayahuasca to you, and I said, hey, check this out. We should check out ayahuasca. And we both had wanted to, we were looking at, like, we went down the rabbit hole of what is this ayahuasca thing. And I remember one of the things, and just so you guys have some context of what is psychedelic therapy, okay? Because, you know, I think a lot of people go, oh my God, they're tripping. What's going on? They're just getting high.
I mean, in the 60s, they used LSD for the same reason.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So, just to give us some background here, I looked on at psychedelictimes.com. It says, when people talk about plant medicines in a psychedelic context, they are most commonly referring to plants as cannabis, mushrooms, and ayahuasca. When smoked or ingested, these plants have psychedelic properties that take people on a transformational inner journey of self-reflection and profound consciousness. While milder psychedelics, such as cannabis, can be used recreationally, stronger plants-based psychedelics like ayahuasca or ibogaine are anything but recreational. Sometimes they do involve physical side effects such as nausea and vomiting, which is a purging aspect, and intense psychological distress of what they consider ego death. All right. So here's the difference in what I really wanted to focus on today. And Johanna obviously has, we both have our own little agendas on what we want to ask our guests, because she's got a lot of information. We're excited to bring on Lois. I know that I really want to understand, as somebody who is healing, going through these aspects, how can this benefit it even more? And it's not, because, I know that a lot of people assume this is, oh, it's for addiction recovery. Oh, it's for this. So I'll definitely love to hear what Lois has to say.
I've never even heard of it being for addiction recovery.
That's how I mostly see it, as an opiate recovery. And that's how I have seen it. But, I mean, there might be more, what people have seen out there, but that's definitely how I have seen it in there. Hello, Vicky. Hello, Lynette. Thanks, guys, for hopping on. We appreciate you all being here. Don't forget to hit like, guys, and let us know that you're here. But let's get into Lois here. All right, I'm going to bring her on board here, but let me tell you a little bit about Lois. So Lois has experienced profound healing from a lifelong illness through indigenous plant medicines, which became a big part of her transforming her in her life. She is dedicated to being a catalyst for the healing of others through sharing her wisdom and support clients to gain a much clearer understanding of themselves, utilizing various healing modalities. She is the founder of Meraki Tribe Collective and is the owner of Design Creatrix. I am so excited to have Lois on board. I'm going to pop her on here. There she is.
Oh, I'm here.
Hi.
Yay, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. This is my favorite subject.
Well, we are excited to have you. And when Johanna said, I found a plant lady.
Oh, I set the intention. I was like, bring it. Come on. I need someone good. I don't know where Lois came from. I don't know where you came from. You were just there. And I was like, oh my God. Yes, I know. You know what? You commented on one of my threads. I think that's what it was. There was a couple of people that showed up, but you like took the cake. And I was like, we got to have her on here.
Well, thank you.
So Lois, before we dive deep on some of the aspects that you do and what you run, can you tell us about your personal experience of how this helped you, which basically brought you down to the rabbit hole of this passion?
So basically, 4 years ago, I was pretty much dying. Like literally, I was in liver failure, and I had a heart attack, and I had lupus, and I was diagnosed with lupus, and I had struggled. So my entire life revolved around being a person with autoimmune disease. Like I was on so many different medications, and I literally couldn't go a few days without my medicine, without just being in horrible pain. I was in constant pain, and I could barely form them because I was just brain fog so bad, and I had sores all over my body because I had systemic lupus. So it was everywhere. And I went to the doctor, and my STED rate was in the 120s. My liver enzymes were in the 500s for about 6 months. And he said,
wow,
you need a liver transplant. And he said, you're going to die without it. And and he said I was going to have to go on long-term prednisone, and that I didn't have a choice, but that I was going to have to go on long-term prednisone. And I said, that's not going to happen. There's got to be another way. And, but he said, you're going to die without it. And I said, well, I mean, and this is judgmental, but I'm still going to say it because it's true. I said, I'd rather be dead than fat. And that's because I've struggled with a lifelong eating disorder as well. And for me, the eating disorder was a huge catalyst because I know what happens when you take long-term prednisone. So I'm not taking it. He goes, you don't have a choice. So I went home that night, just like, there has to be another way. And I caught my daughter smoking pot. And I was devastated because I've owned a parenting magazine for 17 years. And I thought pot was a gateway drug. I've written hundreds of articles about how pot's a gateway drug and it leads you down the street. So I immediately saw my brilliant, smart daughter, a meth addict on the street. Yeah, that was my thought. Pot's a gateway drug. She's a drug addict. She's going to lose her scholarship. She's not going to go to college, And I was devastated for a few days. And after not speaking to her for 3 days, she said, can we talk? She said, I want to tell you why I smoke pot. And she goes, I'm not out at parties doing it. She goes, I have 6 AP classes and I'm type 1 diabetic and there's all these benefits. And she said, and so I smoke before I study. And that's how I'm able to get all 4s and 5s on my AP exams. And that's how I'm supposed to do this. And she goes, I'd like to show you some research. And so she sits down in front of the computer and she starts showing me all this research about psychedelics. And she says, and I want to tell you what I want to do. She said, I want to be a doctor and I want to do medical research, but what I want to study is ethnobotanicals and psychopharmacology.
Wow.
I said, what? Like, I've never heard those words before. I didn't even know what they were. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know that magic mushrooms existed as a thing on the planet. Like, I'd never heard of that. I've never done any kind of drug. I've never taken a draw off a cigarette, not even one puff off a cigarette in my whole life. I don't smoke weed, like nothing. And so we sit in front of my computer for like hours and she's showing me all this stuff. And she said, and I think that you should try ayahuasca. Everything in me is telling me, I think you should try ayahuasca because they're curing people left and right with autoimmune disease with ayahuasca. And I said, ayahuasca? And she said, ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca? And she said, ayahuasca. And I said, well, what is it? And she goes, well, it's a psychedelic. And I said, so it's like a drug. I said, well, no, Haley, I don't do drugs. I'm never going to do drugs. So that's out. Not happening. Yeah. But I made peace with her smoking marijuana because she's diabetic and she was using a lot less insulin and she showed me all this research. And I said, okay, as long as you're not at parties, I'm okay with it.
And let's just add to the fact that she wanted to actually further her education on the aspects of it too.
Well,
I mean, I'm seriously impressed with her approach.
I'm really impressed, like completely.
Like you did some good parenting there, woman.
17 years owning a parenting magazine.
Yeah,
and my kid wants to study drugs. So seriously, I asked her. I said, Haley, how do you even know about this stuff? And she said, well, I started looking for a cure for lupus. And she goes, I wanted to find it because she goes, I'm so afraid. I'm a single mom. And she said, I'm so afraid you're going to die and you're all I have. I can't lose you. Like, what would I do without you? And she goes, and I'm just trying to find another way. And she goes, and Mom, they're amazing and they cure all these things. And if you would just open your mind a little bit, you're the most closed-minded person I know. Just open your mind a little bit. And so I thought about it for a couple of days, and just we talked about it and then I put it aside. And about a week later, I was having lunch with my best friend. And I said, have you ever heard of ayahuasca? And she's like, stop it. She goes, no way. I can't believe it. She goes, oh my gosh, we're doing it in 2 weeks. And I'm like,
wow.
What? You have to come. You have to come. Like, I used to think, so she texts the shaman and says, can my friend come? And And she was like, oh my gosh, you have to be there. You have to come. And turns out the ceremony was full. They only allowed 12 people per ceremony, and it was full, and there was no room for me in the ceremony. And so I was like, see, wasn't for me. And I just put it out of my head. Well, the night before the ceremony, she called me and she goes, I'm not going to the ceremony and you're going in my place. And she goes,
I love this story.
Right.
She said, get in the car and drive. So now it's ayahuasca, and it's actually a full weekend ceremony. They call it the weekend with the grandparents. So it's ayahuasca on Friday night, and then on Sunday they do San Pedro and Sananga. And I don't know why, but I got in my car because at that point I'm desperate. Like I'm dying. I'm really sick. I'm on the schedule to have a liver transplant. To have a liver biopsy, so I can get on the liver transplant list. And so my biopsy is scheduled like 2 weeks after that. And so I show up at the ceremony. I don't know anybody. I get there. I don't know anybody there. We come in this room and everybody's sitting in this circle, and there's all these Native American instruments and buckets and little mats. And like, it's just, and I've never experienced anything like that. And I walk in and I have no idea. Like, I know nothing about nothing. I know nothing about energy medicine, nothing. And I get in there.
Wow, you really ripped the Band-Aid off, didn't you?
I ripped it. Like, I didn't know what I was getting into.
Culture shock.
So I didn't come because I've never drank. I've never done anything. Like, I've never really been in an altered state. And
well, hold on. Just 1 second, because this is really profound. This is awesome in every aspect, just for the fact that like Johanna said, you rip the Band-Aid off all at once. Because most people, even if they're at the point of going, I'm dying, most of them will accept the fact that that is what they will see. They'll pinpoint of saying, this is my future. This is what it is. So
what was your intent?
Yeah. So that's really what I want to know is what was the intent on that?
When you were walking in, did you have an intention at all?
So as we sat around the room and we sat there, they had us set our intentions at the beginning of the ceremony and go around and like literally they didn't know me or know anything about me. So all I said was, I'm very sick and I'm in need of physical healing. And I didn't tell them that I'd had a heart attack and that I was in liver failure. I didn't tell them like the details. I just said, I'm really sick. I think I said I have lupus. And, I was literally on so many medications and I was just a mess. I was in and out of the hospital constantly. Like, every conversation that I had with anybody was about how sick I was all the time. I can't imagine how I even had any friends, because literally it was, I see that now looking back, because my life revolved around being sick. And the thing about it is when you have autoimmune disease or there's a lot of payoffs. You get a lot of attention, you get a lot of sympathy. It gives you an excuse to live a half-lived life,
Right.
Because anytime you I don't feel well. And you get out of everything and everybody treats you like a little delicate flower. And so for me to have healing, I had to be willing to let that go. And I had no idea who I was on the other side of that.
I am so glad you pointed that out. So glad you pointed that out. Yeah, because I have an autoimmune disorder, so I'm really resonating hard with this, and the fact that because you do get a lot of sympathy in that level because people can't see it, so they assume.
You have to be willing to let go of the victim's story that gives you the attention.
Exactly, you do. And so I went into this ceremony with no expectations, nothing. And we go into the night, we do the medicine and the shamans. And I'm so fortunate because the people that I worked with, I was so blessed. They're true healers and they take all the precautions and they manage the room. They run a traditional ceremony. It's a very, very safe space. They set sacred space. They do it and they follow up. I mean, they really provide the care because part of plant medicine is the most important thing is the integration afterwards as well.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of follow-up that needs to happen. But so we get into the ceremony and we go through the process and they come over and they work on me. And I was kind of blown away because she went straight for my heart and he went straight for my liver. And they were kind of doing like this body work. And I'm like, how did they know? Because I don't think I mentioned it. Maybe I did. I don't know. But anyway, at the end of the night, after the ceremony was over, everybody was sharing their experience. I was one with the universe and I was this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I saw frogs. Like literally every time I closed my eyes, I would see fractal frogs and hieroglyphic frogs. And I would just see frogs.
But frogs are purification. So that's amazing.
So yeah, so the shaman said, she goes, oh my gosh, you need Kambo. Kambo will heal you. And so Kambo is an animal medicine, but it's also an indigenous medicine. And they burn it onto your skin.
Yep. I have it too.
Yeah.
My 3 dots.
Yeah.
And you still have that combo episode, Johanna, on your channel. We'll have to link that to this.
Yeah, I actually documented my whole entire combo journey.
Yeah,
it's on my YouTube channel.
I actually did combo on my recommendation. So
awesome.
Oh, you talked to Ashley about combo?
Yeah.
Her and I did it together. We documented our thing.
Yeah. I'm the one that talked her into doing it. So
yay! Good job.
I had a little say in it, I think. But anyway, so they're like, oh my gosh, you need to do combo. But they said you need to come back on Sunday. And you need to do the rest of the weekend because your healing is just starting. And so Sunday they were doing a San Pedro ceremony. So ayahuasca is the grandmother medicine. It's a very feminine. It's a really out of body experience. I mean, you're like out in the ethers and you kind of are separated from your body and you go into this space and it's visions and stuff. And San Pedro is the grandfather. It's a very masculine, inward journey. It takes you inward, and it's like you feel everything, and it's really amazing. So I was like, well, I don't really have the money to come back because I just sent my kid to Europe to go study abroad for a year and spend a small fortune. And I'm like, and they said, don't worry about it. Spirit told us you need to be here. Just come. So I came on Sunday and we did the San Pedro, and they start their ceremony out a little differently. They start out with EFT, with tapping and sound, and they use breath and sound. So we take the medicine and then we start and we do this tapping and we go through and we do this clearing. And they had us do a clearing on our lineage and a whole forgiveness process with our parents and and I had gone through some serious family trauma and I'm talking serious. The stuff that movies are made of, trauma. And so I had a lot of stuff down trauma. So we're going through this tapping and we're screaming and we're like, and they're like, let it go. Don't hold on to it. You gotta press it, because they teach that with these medicines, you got to feel it to heal it. And and I want to add this, that the most important thing, if you decide to do plant medicines, is who you do it with. And there's a lot of little pop-up shamans, I call them, people that do medicine, and all of a sudden they think they're going to start doing it and serving it. And you need to sit with somebody that knows the lineage of the medicine, that understands the contraindications, that understands how to work with the energy of the medicine, because stuff comes up. But if you have somebody there that can help you process it through, it's the most healing thing. So let me
ask you this real quick, though, in case you know. There is a place called Soul Quest Ayahuasca Church of Mother Earth in Florida. And that's the one that I have been drawn to. Do you know anything about that place?
I have lots of friends that have been there.
Okay. So that place is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends that have been there. Yeah. So it's just, I think they bring different people in and out, but I have a lot of friends that have been there. So the people that I work with, they come to the States. They don't live in the States. They come and do a tour every year. And I'm so blessed that I got them and had this experience with them, because they were really amazing. But we did this ancestral clearing, and then I went outside and I could actually see how the earth, the grid, there's a little grid above the earth, and I could see how everything is connected. And for the first time in my life, I understood that we are all connected. You could see a grid and how the plants, and you could see the auras on people and the energy. You could see everything. And it was the most, like the veil was lifted, and you could suddenly see all of these things that are not there with our regular eyes. And it was powerful and spiritual. And then they called me in and said it was I did yoga out there because I just finished getting my yoga teaching training certification. And so I did a vinyasa flow outside in the sun and for the first time I understood what every movement in yoga meant. Like I understood it all. And I got it. And I felt this connection that I'd never felt. And then they said, well, it's your turn to come in and be on the mat and do the healing work with the healers. And they do Sananga. So that's the little eye drops. And it actually contains iboga. Yeah.
I will never do that again, ever.
So this is the first time I've ever done it. And let me tell you, I was screaming like I was being murdered because it feels like somebody stabbing knives in your
Grace
eyes.
through suffering right there. Grace through suffering. The less you fight it, the better it is, because it's terrible. It is the worst pain ever.
So can we step back for a second? Because like you had like for yours, which I found like kind of cool, is that so you step in the doors for this ayahuasca thing, and then they tell you that you need to go, or what other kind of healing that you need for another modality, another kind of medicine, frog medicine. That's very awesome. But like for somebody who is looking at it or trying to it and just really new to it, where do they go to get the information or the recommendations in this aspect of what's good for them? And how can they feel that they can trust it? Do you have any advice on that? Or
that's what Meraki Tribe Collective is for. So the business that I just launched is basically, we're going to be putting a lot of educational, I put together a community and building a community, and it's mostly for healers and plant medicine people and shamans. And we're going to be putting a ton of educational information out there on how to understand the different medicines, the traditions of the medicines, the contraindications, what's safe, where to start. And then like I'm putting together like a whole list of what to look for. You know, if they're not asking you certain medical questions, you should not be sitting and doing medicine with them, because there are contraindications to some of these medicines that can be deadly. And so it's important to know that. So I'm actually creating a resource to really educate people on these medicines so that they can do them. And I don't know that I'm actually learning how to serve all the medicines. I don't know that I'll actually ever serve medicine, but I want to understand it. I've been going through a lot of the different trainings and the initiations and things like that to understand, but I really want to be able to facilitate bringing people together and bringing in different healers and different experiences so people can come and have opportunities to have an experience of medicine in a safe environment, in a safe space.
Is this a free community, or is this something that they have to pay for?
It's free for anybody that wants to come and be part of the community and access the information. But if you're a business and you want to list on there, you pay to be in the community. However, it's $22, which is the number of grace, or $55, which is the number of freedom, or $144, which is so they're all based on gene keys. So the pricing for the community is the entire community and platform is based on gene keys as well. So
that's pretty cool that you kind of mix two of them together.
What's the difference?
I got the whole download to build Meraki during a medicine ceremony, so it all came through that and through gene keys. So yeah.
So what's the difference between ayahuasca and DMT?
Well, no, ayahuasca is DMT.
But then why would they be listed separately?
Well, okay, so ayahuasca contains DMT, which, by the way, we naturally make DMT. We make DMT on the day we're born, the day we die, and some people say when we dream. So DMT is a natural substance that's always in our body.
I feel like I can do it when I'm in a meditative state.
And some people can access the DMT. It has to do with your pineal gland and how open you are, and so you can access it through that. But so ayahuasca is a root and a vine that you mix together. It's like the leaves and then this root, you mix it together into a brew, and the one activates the other. So without the activation of the two different plants, you don't get the DMT effect. You don't get the psychedelic effect. DMT is where they take just the DMT derivative and you can smoke it. Or then there's 5-MeO DMT, which you get from bufo, which is from the frog. That's another frog there's a lot of frog healers out there that have frog medicine. So DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is it's in ayahuasca. It's also in there's other plant medicines that have it in it as well. And that
like
have
mescaline?
No, mescaline's so that's San Pedro. So that's the other medicine that I did. So San Pedro is different from ayahuasca. So, like I said, ayahuasca is DMT, and San Pedro is mescaline, and then there's iboga, which is the chief of them all. So
which is what Tanya really wanted to talk about, was that one.
Yeah, it was the iboga. So, because I feel like we're going to be all over the place with on there. So,
let me finish and tell you what happened with the drops in my eyes.
Perfect.
So they put these drops in my eyes, because this is really pivotal to my healing. They put the drops in my eyes, and I'm screaming and I'm crying, and all of a sudden the female shaman starts pressing here in my chest, which is the grief center. The male shaman's working over here on my left side, and she's working on my right side, masculine, feminine. And she leans in and she says, Lois, your brother's here. And she said, and he wants you to know how much he loves you. And he needs your forgiveness. And he wants you to know his soul is free. And he needs you to tell your mother he loves her, he forgives her, and that his soul is free. And my brother committed suicide. And after he stabbed both of my parents and nearly killed them, they did live. And it was this massive trauma. And it was so humiliating for me because I had a magazine and, you know, I was really, everybody knew me. They'd watch my kids grow up and, you know, back home in Kentucky. And I was horrified and I was so ashamed that all this was on the news everywhere. And I shoved it all down. And see, that's what we do. We take all of the unresolved trauma and all that psychic residue and we stuff it down into the interstitial cells of our being. And then it manifests as dis-ease in the body. It manifests as addiction, as anxiety, as depression, as cancer, as lupus. So the indigenous people believe that we carry 7 generations back and 7 generations forward in our DNA. So a lot of the stuff that we come into life with is we're bringing in our DNA from our family, and we're bringing in DNA from, you know, other people that are coming in, you know, our past lives, and we bring that into our current existence. And then we take all this trauma that we don't deal with and we don't resolve, and we shove it down. And it gets stuck and it comes out as disease. So they say that grief we hold here in our heart, in our chest, and it affects our heart. Now, I'd had a heart attack and I'd had chronic pleurisy and pericarditis as a result of the lupus. And then I was in liver failure, where we store anger, guilt, and shame in our liver.
Yep.
And so they start working on me, and she leans in and she says as well, now, I grew up a little Baptist girl and we don't believe in all that stuff. We don't believe in spirits. We don't believe in, and so this was all stuff that was so far out of my realm of what was possible, but not one person there knew I had a brother that had committed suicide. There was no way that he came through her to me. And there's
she's
no
a
way
medium.
There's no way she could have known that. And she said, you know, it's happened to her a few times and she doesn't even really know what she says when she's in ceremony. And all of a sudden, the male shaman, I mean, she's like says this to me and I lose it. I'm crying hysterically and I'm screaming and my arm is up in the air, just shaking. And the male shaman starts pulling this blackness out of my liver. And he's just pulling and pulling and pulling. And because you're tripping balls. So you can see this blackness and this energy. And then they're like, let it go. And everybody's gathered around me and they're all holding space. And, let it go, let it go. It's not yours to hold on to, let it go. And I'm screaming and like it's being pulled from my body. And all of a sudden they just laid my hands back on my chest. And they said, okay, you can open your eyes. You're done. And I opened my eyes and there was a skylight above me. I thought it was God because I had the iboga in my eyes and they were all wonky. And I looked up and I jumped up and I said, oh my gosh, I see and in that moment, my entire life flashed before me and I suddenly knew. And all the pain, the abuse, everything with my brother, that I just was overwhelmed with compassion for my brother, for my parents, and I understood in that moment why every single thing had happened to me in my life. And in that moment, I dropped all the cognitive dissonance that I had around religion that never felt right and never fit with me. I believe very much in God because I don't believe you can do plant medicines and not believe in God, but or source. You know, I just don't believe in the big man in the sky like that. But I just in that moment I knew, and I literally made peace with everything, that all the illness, the sickness, I just dropped it all, and the forgiveness of what, and I suddenly had that peace that passes understanding that they talk about in the Bible in my soul, and I said, oh my God, I'll never be the same.
Well,
I walked out of there and I've never been the same.
Well, let me ask you, because you know you're a special case because you were doing physical healing and it all stems from emotions. We know that, you know, I just went through this huge download with my spirit team about shame being the root of autoimmune disorders. And because I have autoimmune as well, and shame has been the biggest problem in my body, you know, that was the source of it. But my question to you is so if someone, you didn't go there for that purpose of tapping into healing your ancestral trauma and all of that. But a lot of people do. A lot of people go into these because they know that they have these programs and patterns that are running, and they know that it stems from these traumatic karmic energies that were preloaded onto these human suits when we joined into them. So my question is once you go through that process of clearing it energetically and physically, there's still an aspect of you spent your whole life like operating from a root program, and you have to replace, you cannot just erase a program. It has to be replaced with something that is, you know, obviously we want it to be something better. So did they help you?
Comes in, by the way.
But okay, so what I'm asking is though, is this is obviously why it's so important to know who you're going to go with, but
right.
They're not going to hold your hand for weeks and months after. And I've seen people who have done ayahuasca and 2 months later or a month later after having it completely changed their whole life without allowing for all of this to integrate. And they regretted it afterwards because they've seen all these epic things that maybe they weren't able to access on their own before and had all this profoundness, but they didn't replace the root, the automatic pilot that happens because our bodies remember cellular memory. So right. What do you tell people, you know, would you recommend they have somebody, a mentor or a community or something that's going to help take them through that integration process?
Absolutely. So we actually have an integration community here in South Florida. We have a community and we have monthly dinners. Well, not since COVID, but before COVID, we had a group and we would get together and we just specifically talked about integration. And we had people that were out there so that if you are dealing with something, and that's part of what Meraki Tribe Collective, the point of it is to have, like, if you're struggling, you can go and find a list of the coaches or the healers, or you can find people that you can work with, because integration is the biggest part. Now, for me, I've been doing so much transformational work my whole life. I have a degree in psychology. Right. It's been I read voraciously. You know, I read 2 to 3 books a week, all self-help, spiritual, you know, that kind of stuff. I love learning and knowledge. And so, but I'm telling you, I stepped in that moment when it was the release of all of that unresolved trauma. And then I came out of that ceremony. The following week, I did Combo. Combo is a full body energetic cleanse. If it's done correctly and done in the right spirit, and like, it literally cleanses. And I've done it 14 times because I have a chronic, and I don't recommend that for most people. 3 rounds in a lunar cycle is all they ever need. For me, because I was trying to heal a chronic illness, I go back ever so often and I do another round. You still don't want to do it more than 12 to 15 times a year because then it has diminishing returns. It can actually cause psychosis.
I know who you are now.
Yeah.
Okay. I got it. All right. Yeah, sorry. Light bulb.
Yeah. Yeah. So Combo can be really dangerous. Combo has a lot of contraindications. A lot of people use it for to get clean from drugs, but you can't have drugs in your system and do Combo because then you could die. Like, literally, people die from it. Yeah. And so that's why it's so important. Like, I would probably not really want to sit with Combo unless I'm sitting with somebody in the jungle or somebody that's IAKP certified or something like that. That's been trained. These people that just go do Combo a couple times and then start deciding to serve it, they're scary.
Well, let me say this, because I honestly, I'm not surprised that Combo came up because I was so resistant to talking about it since I've already have it all documented. But yeah. When you brought up the certification, I want to say this because the woman who facilitated ours, she mentioned that through her certification process, right, of learning these drugs and how to serve them and all of that, that there was actually inappropriate behavior going on by the teachers of the places that certify people. And she was taught a lot of inappropriate behavior. And so it kind of made me a little, and I had already walked in with cameras, you know, it was like, we're going to record all this. And so I was kind of relieved that we were recording it for documentation purposes, because all of a sudden I didn't feel safe when she was telling me that. And so, I mean, if that's the case, and if the certifiers are that way, like, how do people find what, besides them being certified, what else do they need to look for?
Well, first of all, like, particularly Combo and Iboga, those are or Ibogaine, Combo and Iboga, those are the ones that people can die from. Yeah. I mean, that people die fairly often from. if done incorrectly. They're at a really high risk. There are certain so when you're sitting in medicine with somebody, if they're not giving you a list and asking you to list all the medications you're taking, all of the supplements you're taking, because there are certain roots and like natural supplements that are also contraindications to these medicines. If they're not asking you for a medical history, like if you have any implants in your body, because that's a direct contraindication, if you've had heart valve issues, there's certain things, if they're not giving you a list and having you sign a disclaimer, I would think twice. I'd think long and hard about asking them. There's some things about your eyes and medicine. Like I always tell them, I'm actually working on this. Hopefully it'll have it up live soon. And it's just like the questions to ask when you're looking for, when you're considering doing medicine, the onus is on you to do your research.
For sure.
Yeah.
To understand the medicine, to understand who you're doing medicine with, what are their qualifications, what is their lineage, where did they learn, or are they just doing it for entertainment? If they're just a bunch of people getting together and doing it for entertainment and it's not for spiritual purposes, you're opening yourself up to the possibility of entities coming in and all kinds of things like that. So this is serious stuff. People that are getting together and doing medicines every weekend, it becomes an abuse just like everything else.
Well, and also if you have to check where your belief system is with it too, because if you, and I'm going to say this just from personal experience and from as many years as I've been teaching, if you believe that there's going to be dark entities, if you believe that there's these things are going to happen, and then you go and do a psychedelic drug, well, you're going to call it in.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you have to check yourself as to where you are. And that's what I really wanted to, to bring up in part of this episode is like, where does someone need to be at? Like, when they're thinking about going into this. And I'm glad that you brought up your story because you were in a desperate situation because of your health wise, but so I kind of wanted to know, a little bit about that. And I guess that kind of answered the question.
I do. I think that, go ahead.
It's set and setting. It's always set and setting.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing in any medicine ceremony situation. It's set and setting.
And get rid of expectations, I guess, would be the biggest thing. Don't have any expectations.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that, what happens a lot of times is that usually it's through the grapevine of some aspect. Somebody did something and then they, say, hey, I had this experience doing this. And that's usually how people resonate to say, does this, what it is? I have a big, profound question for you though, because this has been something that has been in my head. Mm-hmm. What if you have somebody who is open-minded, who is, obviously, very connected with spirit, obviously has been through trauma themselves, have cleared out a lot of things, and what they can expect with being that open compared to somebody who maybe is not open.
That's a good question.
And then has that same experience. Okay. Like obviously it's going to be a different experience, but does that person who is more conscious aware, are they going to get some other different experience than the person who might be a little bit closed off?
Because when you were talking about what you see outside, like I see that with my eyes open. And so I was like, well, am I going to waste my time?
Too. Yeah, I do now.
Am I going to waste my time if I do this?
So expectations, if you go in with an expectation, you're probably going to be disappointed. Mm-hmm. And so fortunately for me, I've just gone into every ceremony with a completely open mind, which I have the capacity to do, and then I have a lot of friends that go in and they're disappointed, or they have this, or they don't have, or they go in and they're not expecting, and they have this profound life-changing experience. Like me, I didn't have any expectations. I didn't know. I came out of that ceremony the following weekend. I did the combo on Friday night. On Monday morning, I had my liver biopsy, and then the shamans invited me to drive down to Miami and do another round. They said, you still need more, you still have more healing to go. And they said, if you get down here, just come. And they said, this is a ceremony for healers. And like everybody there is a healer. And I said, but I'm not a healer. And she's like, oh, but you are. And she goes, you need to get here. So I drove down to Miami and I did a whole nother round of medicine. And it was completely different from the first ceremony.
Oh, wow.
And like nothing like it at all. But it was really profound because the first few times I did the medicine, I was so in need of healing, and I didn't have any of the spiritual stuff come in really. it was really just this like a purging, a cleansing. And before I could get to that point, I had to release all these toxins in my body. My body was so full of toxic residue, emotional, unresolved toxic residue. And then I was on so many medications. I threw my medications in the trash. I stopped taking them before I started doing the medicine, because you can't be on your medicine. So I put them, and it's been 4 years and I haven't had any medication since. And I am medication free. I don't take any medications at all, nothing. And I literally couldn't go a week. I was debilitated without my medicines before, but I did the combo. And then I went in on this Sunday and the Monday morning, and I had the liver biopsy. And then I went and spent another weekend and did another round of medicine. And this is the time when I started tapping into like the spiritual downloads and like really getting the the other part of it, you know, because and at the end of that ceremony, this random stranger that I still don't know today who she was, she came up to me, she put her hand on my back on my liver, and she said, "I just want to let you know that you're healed." And I was still very skeptical about all of this, because it literally goes against everything I was ever taught. So that next day, I'm driving back to Palm Coast, and I get a call from my doctor, and he said, "Lois, something really weird happened." He said, "We just got your test results back." And he said, "I think we switched your test results. Like, I think your test results got mixed up." He said, "Because you haven't had normal blood work in, you know, ever." And, you know, right before I had started down this medicine path, I'd had a CT scan, an MRA, an MRI, and I was having blood work every single week because my liver enzymes were so dangerously high. My SED rate was so dangerously high. I literally went in every Monday and had blood work. And so I have like a years and a half and 15 years of blood work and medical tests, but my liver was massively enlarged and the texture was all a mess. And so they were expecting to tell me that I had liver cancer or something, like, you know, like something was terribly wrong. And he said, your test was normal. Like, it was non-remarkable. I mean, there was only like, and he said, "I don't understand your blood work." He said, "You've never had normal blood." He said, "The only thing I think is we've had 4 doctors look at it." And he said, "Can you come back in so we can run your blood work again?" And I said, "No, I'm healed." And he goes, "No, seriously, I need you to come back in so we can run. But I think we missed your results up, and you know, you're like dying." So I went back in. They ran the blood work again. It was all normal. I threw my medicine in the trash. I told him about the medicines. That was 4 years ago. I'm completely healthy and well. I do not have any symptoms of lupus, and I was debilitated for 15 years with a diagnosis. 20 years before. I have no symptoms. I have continued to work with plant medicines. And for me, it was a profound healing. And for me, the reason I believe that I was able to heal is the letting go. I think it was the tapping and the emotional release and the cleansing of my fractal lines and the trauma, and letting that go. And then the combination of the combo, then purging my system and cleansing out all the, you know, all that. And then
do you see how divine? I hope everybody sees this right now, because all I'm hearing is this was her purpose. Her mission was to be sick, and to be so sick that she was on death's door, and to tap into the resources of the ancients, which is the plants and all of that, and to allow that to heal her. And that is irrefutable proof. And this was her mission. It was part of the plan that whole time.
It was, and that's why I spent my entire life disappointed with my life, because it didn't turn out the way I always thought I was going to get married and have babies and have this big family and have like the perfect life. And I got divorced and I ended up being a single mom, and I do have really 2 amazing kids, and they're like my favorite thing on the planet. But you know, my life didn't go as planned, and so I was so disappointed until that moment. And I stood up, and suddenly I literally made peace with my whole life.
There was so much purpose behind your pain that that's amazing. I just love that. We're getting close on time, but I wanted you to touch real quick on mushrooms, because I've been drawn to mushrooms as well, and I don't know why. So can you tell us a little bit about why someone would want to, like, what do mushrooms offer somebody?
So I lead mushroom ceremonies, actually. Don't tell anybody. So mushrooms are really the best if you want to experience psychedelics and you want to try something that's safe. Like, you pretty much can't die from mushrooms. There are no downsides to them. And studies show that people that work with mushrooms You can have a little bit of a bad journey every now and then. I've never had a bad one. Literally, when I host ceremony, we start out with set and setting. We get a very sacred space. We keep everybody in a space where they cannot get out and go anywhere. Once you're in the ceremony, you're in the ceremony. We don't let you leave. And you have to sign something that says that you agree to that. And then we literally start the ceremony with we do tobacco, and we give an offering to the fire of anything that you do not want to bring in the space. And then we call in love and light. We put a protection of angels, and we call in the spirits to protect and guide us and ask for a beautiful journey. And so we set proper set and setting. But mushrooms are a really beautiful, beautiful. They actually are literally proven to rewire your neural pathways in your brain. They heal neural pathways. There's a ton of science on this that shows that they're very effective in creativity. One round of mushrooms can remove depressive symptoms for 6 months.
Now, how do people know which mushroom to take, though?
I mean, know.
There's so many varieties out there.
Yeah. So you got it. So the ones that I work with the most it's called penis envy and golden teachers. Those are the two best that I've had the best experience with.
Hold on, let me write this down.
Well, we are recording it, Johanna.
I know, but I don't want to go back.
Yeah, so I can tell you. And we actually serve them in raw organic chocolate, so they taste good, and you can just mix them, and it's a really beautiful. You have the sacred geometry, and you'll see all the fractals, and it's a really some are more in your body, and you feel it in your body, and then some are more visual. But mushrooms are a really great way to just tap into spirit, to get an experience before you deep dive into something like ayahuasca or iboga.
Do you want to dive into iboga too?
Yeah, so iboga, the single most profound experience of my life, including childbirth, and I have 2 kids who are my favorite thing on the planet. And this was the most profound experience. We actually have a retreat coming up in the fall for iboga that you have to do it out of the country. So you have to go either to like Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Mexico, somewhere like that to do it. So we have one coming up if anybody's curious or interested. But it's completely different from any other medicine that I've done. And because you start out, and it's like basically sawdust. It's just a root ground up and they dump this sawdust in your hand and you eat it and you chew it up and it tastes terrible. And kind of makes your mouth a little bit numb. And we called in all the ancestors and we did this beautiful thing, but it is a 36-hour journey.
Wow.
So when you're
you're in the trip for 36 hours?
You're in the trip for about 12 to 15 hours.
Okay.
That's still long.
I was going to say, that's a long time.
And it was like, I could literally talk about this for an hour. You go through this entire life review. So it's really funny, something you said earlier. It literally, it's the truth teller. It's the kind of the chief of all plant medicine. It's been around for the longest. And iboga is, it's a root from Africa, and that's where it grows. And it contains 13 alkaloids, and it's the most healing, one of the most healing things. And I've actually heard a lot of people think that it's the root of the tree of good and evil in the Bible, that's the iboga plant. A lot of people think it's one and the same. It's profound, but it takes you through an entire life review. And pretty much everybody that I know that's done it has had the same experience. And you literally go through your entire life. And I literally went through all my past lives and my current life. And I had this complete life review. And then it basically defragments and removes and downloads all of that programming that you've had your whole life. Gone. I walked out of that ceremony going into it. I've always had a million voices in my head, and I've taught meditation for years. And I used to teach meditation and say, okay, we're going to sit and we're going to close our eyes and we're going to let our thoughts float on by. And if a thought comes up, you're just going to let it go. And I can never do it actually myself, even though I was teaching class, because I had 5,000 voices in my head.
Yeah.
Walking out of iboga, I have one voice in my head.
So let me ask you this. So, because you took iboga after, that was probably one of the things when you've already experienced a lot of different kind of plant medicines at this point. So this point you've had experience with other plant medicines, you know what it's about. And it's also those other plant medicines cleared something on there.
Yes.
from a theory side, what if you were to take iboga before you did all of that? Do you think it would have been just as profound, or do you think it was also called, universal timing, meaning that this was the time for you to take that at this particular time? Do you think that plays a factor?
I mean, do you know anybody that took it without having any other medicines before?
No, pretty much everybody I know that I don't really know anybody that went straight into iboga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I hear so many things where like you're signing off on iboga. So usually people have had other experiences on this. So I was just curious.
But for me, I realized that my life has been so perfect. Like everything happened exactly as it was supposed to, so that I could make peace with my past and peace with all the trauma. I mean, because let me tell you, I had some trauma, and I'm not triggered. I don't have any, I am so grateful for every single moment of struggle that I've ever had in my life. I am grateful. I run head on into struggle now, because I realize that's where we get our greatest gifts, come through our shadows. And so for me, iboga, it was just perfect timing. I was terrified. Yeah. I would be lying if I said I wasn't. I was scared to death. And
that's a long ass time to be tripping.
I'm telling you, I read up about it, and I was looking at stuff. I'm like, this sounds hardcore. I don't know if I would ever be able to encounter something like that in that aspect just on there. But
how long do you trip with ayahuasca? How long is the trip?
So ayahuasca is about 8 to 12 hours, depending on.
See, I didn't realize it was that long either.
Yeah. So ayahuasca is about 8 to 12 hours. You usually do a couple rounds of it, depending on who's serving. And mushrooms, you typically 4 to 6 hours. So a mushroom journey is usually about 4 to 6 hours. So when you're in it, you got to be that's why setting and being somewhere and not having to go somewhere and not having distractions. And all the ceremonies that I do, we take all electronic devices and we get them out of the space. So you are in the space present.
You're basically you're forced to feel.
Just sit with yourself.
And sit with yourself.
And what I find is some people, and so in all the ceremonies that I do, we have silence. Like we don't let people talk.
I couldn't do that with you. I'm sorry. I'm a talker. I talk. I process out loud.
Well, I do too. We do talk, but we sit and we have periods of silence. So I have my ceremonies, like when I facilitate a mushroom ceremony, the first 2 hours are in silence with music. It's guided. We do a guided journey. We do a guided shamanic drumming journey. We do, I always do a gene keys activation. I do different things like that for the first 2 hours. And then the second hours are opened up for connection and for people to process it in communication with other people. So it's usually about 4 hours. So we have 2 hours of, going inward and 2 hours of, if you want to stay inward, you can. And if you want to, go, and communicate and talk and work through things, you can. Iboga, you're laying on a mat with a blindfold on and you pretty much can't move. And so when we started,
because you're paralyzed, because your body's heavy, or because they tell you can't move?
I don't think that most people could get up. I could.
Okay. That explains a lot.
You're pretty much so tripped out.
I had to do way more medicine than everybody else. I always do. I always require more than everybody.
You probably have a high tolerance for stuff too. But if you were taking medicine a lot,
Well, I haven't taken medicine a lot.
No, but when you did, if I find that, because I took a lot of medicine too, so I find that you have a high tolerance for stuff. Yeah,
so a massive amount of. I never thought about that until just now.
I was the same way. I stopped taking all prescription drugs. What was it, in 2016? I literally threw all the drugs away, and that in the middle of it, and that was it. And mine wasn't. My drugs were for other things, but I can never go back to take. I don't even like taking Advil, honestly. So I have an extremely high tolerance. But for me, I was laughing internally when you were talking about cannabis being a psychedelic, because it doesn't do that to me. My vibration is so high all the time that it grounds me. It kind of brings me back down.
It just goes. I go straight to sleep. I don't like it at all. So I don't do it. But
it makes me feel more human than anything else. And so it has a different. It doesn't have a psychedelic at all effect for me.
So with that, when we went into the iboga, so the guy that led the ceremony, he said, so you're going to have hallucinations or visions. And he said, and you're going to wonder if they're real or not. And the answer is yes. And let me tell you, I could not decipher if what I was seeing was real. It felt like it was not like ayahuasca.
I think it is real though, because it's all energy. So
it felt real. Like when I was going in my bedroom, I felt like I'm exactly like in my space. Like when I was in like with my family and like a little girl, like I went through, because I did this complete life review on iboga. And I literally processed and I forgive and I let go and it defragmented and they go through this whole process.
That's so crazy.
And it's a complete reboot. Like it is like you come out of there defragmented, rebooted. And like I said, I don't have all those voices in my head, but they're just gone. I came back and everybody's like, you're so different. Like I am so grounded all the time now. I'm able to go out into the ethers. You know, I'm able to astral travel. I can do all that stuff by choice. But I am so grounded. I don't get triggered.
You've embodied your higher self.
And so it's so funny. That's exactly what they had us. You'll have to read. I have a story and I actually have a podcast out there that tells the story of the iboga, but that's exactly what he had to do. So prior to going into the medicine, you write a list of questions. And then halfway through the ceremony, when you're like really in it, the shaman comes around and he asks you, as you're like this little child speaking to your higher self, ask yourself the answers to the questions that you asked for the medicine. And I answered them all back. And at the end of the ceremony, he has you merge with your higher self.
Yeah.
And it is literally the most sacred thing that I've ever been through in my entire life. And then we did 2 rounds of medicine. So usually with iboga, you do 2 rounds a day apart. And so it's really intense. Yeah.
So the next day you're tripping for another 20 hours or something?
So you do 36. So you start at night. And so you do 12 to 15 hours where you're in the deep, deep journey part of it. And then the next 12 hours, they call it wave 2 or phase 2. You're in this wakeful, like you couldn't sleep if you want. You're so tired and so exhausted in your body. Like you can barely walk, you can barely get out of bed, but you cannot sleep. Your brain is just, your body processing.
Wired but tired.
So and then all of a sudden, when you hit phase 3, it's like I was sitting there talking, and all of a sudden I just went. I was just
good night. Turn off.
And I literally died, like ceased to exist as a human being for 12 hours, like where I don't have any record. And when I woke up the next morning, it was funny because the whole time we were in ceremony, there were like 60-mile-an-hour sustained winds with gusts of 100 miles an hour going. And it was whirl and it was so loud and you could barely hear anything. And I woke up the next morning, and this is after 36 hours. I woke up and I'm alone in my room and it was silence. It was just like I was looking around and there was no noise in my head. There was no noise. Everything was silent. And I got up and I'm like, wow. And it was just this, I was just completely rebooted, reborn. I know I've said that a million times, but that was just, it was so powerful.
Would you recommend somebody do that who hasn't taken ayahuasca?
I would think if you start, so when I got up out of it, I said, you know what, I don't think I ever need another plant medicine as long as I live. I think if you started with iboga, you could be one and done, to be honest.
Let's do it. I'm going. Tanya, let's go to Mexico.
That's what I was telling you. I was like, I think we need to skip all this.
Let's just go straight to the big daddy. Let's go.
Well, come with us. I'll send you some information. You want to come with us? We got a couple spots left. Seriously, I said, I don't know that I'll ever need to do another plant medicine as long as I live. Other than I want to lead other people to the medicine. Yeah. But I mean, I literally but we had a second ceremony to go. And the second ceremony wasn't quite as spectacular and beautiful. It was really, really interesting. And I didn't talk about it a lot when I came back because I was so blown away by how fantastical the first one was. But the second one was about sitting in darkness. And the medicine said, so you want to be a healer? and you want to do this work, then you get to learn to sit with people in their darkness. You get to meet people where they're at, because as a healer, I can't meet people with judgment. And I have to meet you and say, if you're an addict and you're here and you're trying to get healing, or you are trying to overcome years of abuse, I have to love you exactly as you are and see you as completely perfect, exactly as you are. And if you never change, I love you and accept you and don't judge you. And that is what creates a space for healing, because then the people are able to receive it. They're able to receive, and they're able to heal, and they're able to let go and process. And that trust happens, and that bond happens. So
that's the biggest compliment. When people give me that as a healer, that compliment that I felt so safe to do that, I'm like, that's the goal. That's the goal.
And that's what I get is, and it's really funny. So when I came out of my first ceremony and I stood up and I said I was just overwhelmed with compassion, and the following week I found Gene Keys, and my life's work is compassion, and I'm here to be the embodiment of compassion, and compassion and peace is my evolution, and harmony. And literally all of my Gene Keys just basically were perfect exactly for this work. And I'm a 6'3", so
I'm a 1'3".
I'm supposed to be doing this later in life. I got it.
I want to say this real quick, because for the people that do understand Gene Keys, I'm a 1'3". So you being a 6'3", we're ruled by our fluids. The third line is ruled in their body by their fluids. And so when you're ruled by your fluids, you have lymphatic problems, you have nervous system problems if you're holding any stagnicity or any old energies in your body. And that's what was happening to me. So all of my body issues are because I'm literally holding toxic fluid. So think about a pond that has no movement. It's just going to grow algae. It's going to have all those things. And so I've spent my life developing modalities to embody your higher self and purify your blood. It's called the purification process. And so, but just the fact that you said you were 6'3", I was like, oh my God, now I know why I'm even more drawn to you, because you have that third line in your body and you're regulated by your fluids. I mean, that's what it is.
So this is very cool, because we have a couple different modalities going into and entwining with one another. This is why we have this show, guys, so that you can see all the different tools that you can utilize that fits for you, and how it's a spider web effect on how it can come together, such as Gene Keys, such as plant medicine, even things like Akashic records, all this kind of stuff. All of it is intertwined to work together. They're all different tools. And that's why we want to bring this show and bring these people on, because it will expand you, and you will have to take your own journey on where you're going to go and how you're going to start off. One of the things, Lois, I know we are close on time. I have your website on here, Meraki Tribe Collective .directory. I also have it on. We'll have it in the description for all of our videos too. But I feel like I could have you on here for hours just talking about.
I know, it's so awesome.
We only had a cusp of it, and I really would. I mean, I would love to have you back on here, because I really want to dive deep on the feelings that come about on here and the different experiences, because we just touched a little bit of it, because we had so much information we had to get in, and Johanna did an excellent job too of making sure we hit our points. But we would love to have you back on the show just to
Will you come back?
Things.
I would love to. I would love to do a show and just tell you the Iboga experience. Like I said, it was the single most profound experience of my life, but the lessons that I learned from that experience were exactly what the world needs right now. My second work was about sitting in darkness, and that the medicine told me that the darkness was coming, and that darkness was coming to the planet, and that we healers are going to be called to sit with the darkness. And I consider myself a light worker, but I am a light worker because I get to sit with the darkness, and we get to love the darkness.
I actually love sitting in the darkness. I think it's the most peaceful place there is, if you ask me.
I do too, actually.
So Vicky did have a question. She just asked if there was any recommendations for California. Can we tell her just to go to your site, or are there going to be things like that where people can go by different state, or can they just reach out to you if they have any kind of insight?
I actually know somebody that's in California doing ceremonies, and my healers happen to be in California right now. So, and they are they're the real deal. They're energetic. They work with, they manage the energy of the space, and that's what really you need to find somebody that understands how to work with energy.
So would you say your site is that, though, that people can go there and find these different individuals for those different states and all those aspects on there?
It's brand new. I just launched it.
I think it's awesome though.
That's the vision for the site.
Cool.
And so it's literally just launched. And so now we just need the people to come.
So, but is there a directory? I know that there was a directory that I pulled up for combo that I looked for certified people. Yeah. So are there directories for ayahuasca or iboga already out there?
So it's really challenging to put a directory together in the United States because ayahuasca is illegal, iboga is illegal, and you cannot
except in churches because it's considered
except for in churches. Yeah. So the churches can be in there. So we're going to start there. But you have to be really careful with putting information out there because there are ramifications. I mean, it is still a class 1. We're working on that as well. My daughter's actually in college right now. She's president of her SSDP, and she was actually supposed to speak in front of Congress on, decriminalization of plant medicines. And
there are some FDA trials out there going on right now.
Johns Hopkins has got some. I think Boulder, Colorado's got some going right now that are really, really promising. And MAPS organization's working really hard to.
You should be testifying in Congress if you ask me, with your medical records and the proof afterwards. I mean, if that's not enough proof,
right, exactly. So my daughter was supposed to be there in August. In April, and then it got canceled because of COVID. But so we're actually going to really be working to talk about those things as well. I mean, part of the reason that I wanted to do this platform is to create a space where people, I would say it's a conscious dating site where it's basically like a dating site for conscious businesses to meet conscious consumers. They come together and set up a profile and you can find the services. And so after our retreats, like we have a few spaces, left for the fall retreat for iboga. We offer extensive integration care. I mean, that's the most important thing, so that when you come back, you know what to do with the stuff that comes up.
That's amazing that you offer that. I really think that is brilliant.
Yes, and you definitely have found your place on what to do, and that's amazing. So thank you, and kudos to you. Kudos for you for stepping through the doors and just absolutely
ripping that shit out. Like, let's do it.
That alone should be just a book.
4 years ago, I would have judged anybody doing plant medicines really, really hard.
Right.
Like I would have been so judgmental and so close to it. But I was literally at that. What do I have to lose? My daughter said, she goes, "You've tried all the allopathic medicine. It doesn't work, Mom. What do you have to lose? Just try it one time."
Well, thanks again, Lois. We appreciate it. Guys, we are wrapping up. We are back next week. We have Lira Lee. Let me say that again. For Akalani modality. So this is all brand spanking new for me. I know, Johanna, I just dived into this when I found this woman, but I'm very interested in learning what this modality that she was downloaded to. And as a tarot reader, it was really interesting how she uses numerology and readings in this aspect. So she's going to teach us a little bit about Akalani. So I'm looking forward to having her on board. And we will see you guys next week. All right.
Bye,
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.